What about ADHD? There's obviously been a rise in ADHD, or at least people reporting or being diagnosed with ADHD, quite significant. Can you find ADHD in the brain? Are we causing ADHD as a function of the way that we're living our lives, or is it something within the brain genetically that I could see?
So it's both. I think clearly you can see ADHD in people's families. In fact, if I have a hyperactive, restless, impulsive, disorganized, procrastinating child, I'm looking at the mom and the dad. I'm like, so where's this coming from? But you could also get ADHD from a head injury, especially if it affects their frontal lobes, which is why you shouldn't let children hit soccer balls with their forehead. You can also get it from the excessive input, making people distracted, just like you said. There's a brand new study out on children who took medicine, right? We always demonize ADHD medicine, but the kids who took medicine actually had bigger brains in their prefrontal cortex than kids who didn't take medicine, who had AD.
Ritalin?
Ritalin.
That's okay. It's speed, basically. Yeah, amphetamines.
It is. But for the kids who have it, I think withholding medicine from a child who really has ADHD is like withholding glasses from someone who has trouble seeing. And it's the easy thing to demonize the drugs until you realize someone who has ADHD, a third of them don't finish high school. And we never ask the right question about, people go, what's the side effects? And it can decrease your appetite. And it can have sleep problems with it. But they don't ask the other question. It's what's the side effect of not taking the medicine, or at least not fully treating it? And there are other ways to treat it besides medicine. You know, for God's sakes, I own a supplement company, and I'm always trying to optimize the nutrients to the brain. Neurofeedback can help. But if you do those things and it's not working, don't be afraid of medicine.
Mm-hmm. By the way, when I was growing up, ADHD either didn't exist or they didn't know about it. Do you think that there's some link to our diet?
Oh, no, it was first described in around 1910, and it's in the first version of the DSM.
Oh, it is, okay.
They called it minimal brain dysfunction. But when we were growing up, there were 1 or 2 of these kids in our classrooms, and now there's 8 to 10.
That's what I mean, is that it seems to, like autism, it seems to be proliferating.
Right, and part of it, I think, is the food that is much more processed. Part of it is the screens, part of it is the distracted parents, and part of it is the teaching.
You always seem to be doing new studies, Daniel. What new studies are you most excited about, or have you completed since we last spoke?
I did one that I'm so excited about on negativity in the brain. And negativity is bad for your brain. So
how do you define negativity?
We actually give them a questionnaire. It's a positivity, negativity, bias questionnaire. And people who are more negative have less activity in their prefrontal cortex. It's actually quite interesting. And so unbridled positivity is bad for you because you need that 15%. But if you're chronically negative, that is bad for your brain.
Is there a link between being a negative person and Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yes. And what's interesting, because you mentioned a gender difference earlier, if you're depressed and you're a woman, it doubles your risk for Alzheimer's disease. If you're depressed and you're a man, it quadruples your risk.
Wow. So there was a study that was done during the COVID years, a couple of years, and it turns out that the rate of depression doubled in women, but not in men.
During COVID.
During COVID. And after COVID, when as students came back and everybody was back to normal, so-called normal, the women stayed depressed at that high level, which is very interesting that it should be the women who suffer
So
most.
in one study, women had 52% less serotonin than men, which I think is really interesting. Women, by and large, have double the risk
even
of
average.
depression. Women have double the risk
Yes.
of depression as men. Their limbic systems are larger, which is also
more
involved
vulnerable,
in
probably. Yeah.
more vulnerable and bonding. And then the whole COVID thing we haven't talked about. COVID causes inflammation in the limbic part of the brain. I had scans of people I was treating, and then they got COVID. And then I scanned them again, and you can just see this dramatic inflammation in the brain.
If someone's listening now and they want to improve their brain health, they want to avoid dementia, they want to be cognitively powerful and capable as they age, they want to get to 80 years old, 90 years old, 100 years old, and have a great brain. And you could only tell them to do 3 things.
Well, Terry said 1, exercise.
Okay, exercise, I'm going to do it.
Start every day with today is going to be a great day.
Positivity.
Push your brain to look for what's right rather than what's wrong.
Okay, so I'm going to be optimistic and grateful.
Omega-3 fatty acids. And either do it with fish or do it with a supplement.
Why did you include omega-3 fatty acids?
Because it decreases inflammation, and 25% of the cell membranes in your brain are made up of omega-3 fatty acids. And as a country, we're dramatically low in them.
And learning. That's maybe one of the things that's been left off the list of top 3 things. But I mean, I remember you telling me that how good learning was for the brain, and even getting outside and running outside versus running on a treadmill is more beneficial.
And if you learn while you're exercising, what you're doing is you're getting blood flow to the hippocampus, and you're more likely to remember it. So
I heard this, yeah. I had someone tell me that they figured out that they could learn better for their exams if they did it in a sauna. So it was a scientist that I spoke to. She said she keeps learning new information when she's in the sauna, because she realized that when she left the sauna and was then tested on it, she was better able to do the exam. And I guess that's correlating to what you said about, because in a sauna, you're going to have a lot of blood flow, I imagine, to the brain.
yes, there's actually a study in JAMA Psychiatry that one sauna bath helped depression, significantly helped depression. And I think it's because of it's balancing the brain. And people who do the most saunas have the lowest risk of Alzheimer's disease.
What is the most important thing as it relates to the subjects that we spoke about today? AI, the brain, neuroscience, that you would like to say to the people that are listening now? There could be 1 million people listening. There could be 20 million people listening. If you could say one thing to them about the brain, AI, neuroscience, whatever you want to say, the floor is yours. What would that be? Over to you first, Terry.
Sleep. Sleep is a time when the body not just regenerates, but your memory is consolidated. So things you've experienced during the day are integrated into your cortex, and it's an interaction between the hippocampus and the cortex for episodic memories. And it's unfortunate what's happening with children now. They're so competitive to get into college that they're cutting back on their sleep, and it's just the wrong time of your life. You shouldn't be cutting it back when your brain is developing. So those 2 things, I would say, sleep and exercise are the most important thing for your brain.
The floor is yours. What would you say to the listeners about all the things we've talked today? What's your closing statement?
Well, I go back to what I talked about in the beginning, which is we've just thrown the barn door open and let the horse bolt out into our schools, into our businesses, into our homes. And before we even asked, is it a gift or is it a Trojan horse that's going to steal from us? We've embraced convenience before understanding consequence. And we've done it before with video games and cell phones and social media and marijuana and alcohol and opiates and high fructose corn syrup and aspartame. And we have to be smarter. We have to tame this horse. It's gone with wisdom, or it's going to trample our children. And so I think we have to be very thoughtful. And it all comes back down to, is this good for my brain or bad for it? Is it good for our collective brains, or is it potentially bad for it? And just answer that question with information and love of yourself, of your family, of your country, community. Yeah, I'm more anxious than when I came in. I don't like that.
It's so front of mind for me at the moment because I have the hindsight, the wisdom of hindsight of all those things you mentioned, like exercise and processed foods and social media and all these things that we tried. And they all seem to follow a similar arc. Some kind of new product or discovery is made. In that early phase, people who have an incentive for that thing to be successful will somewhat like gaslight you into thinking that it's fine. And then we get into the second phase where we start to see sort of some consequences. Then we study what's actually happened. We figure out that there was always a trade-off and that nobody really understood the trade-off. And then people change their behavior. So now when I go into these new technologies where the short-term benefit is really clear, it's making me more productive, I pause and I go, there's going to be a trade-off here. There's always a trade-off. What is the trade-off? And am I comfortable and conscious of what that trade-off is? And if the trade-off, so I try to figure out what the trade-off is with things like AI, and I go, okay, the trade-off is probably I'm going to be worse at critical thinking. And that might have an impact on my social relationships if I fall in love with fucking Annie, because she's pretty hot, to be fair. And I really value my critical thinking. I really value my ability to solve problems and to articulate myself and to write and to communicate with my loved ones in an effective way. So what can I do if that is the trade-off now? And one of the things that I'm doing now feels really counterintuitive in a world where everybody's got these productivity gains because they're using these tools, which is to refrain. And I wonder if one of the great advantages of the next decade, one of the great hedges for anyone that's wanting to be a great critical thinker, entrepreneur, creative, is to go left when everyone's going right, which is to reframe and do it the hard way. And if we look at history, in these arcs that we've discovered with food and with exercise and all these things and dating, doing it the hard way, like we said about the marshmallow test and delaying the gratification, seems to yield the greatest returns. So I think I'm going to do it the hard way.
And it might be the easiest because it won't have the side effects.
Yeah, the hard way.
Right? I want to feel good now and later as opposed to now, but not later.
And to be clear, this doesn't mean I'm not going to use AI or ChatGPT. It just means that when it matters, when the thinking matters, I will think for myself. And when the communication matters, I'll communicate for myself. That's my conclusion.
You should hope that your children will feel the same way when they grow up.
But they will model what you do, right? Every day you model health or not health.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.